Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show on India's national television channel, Doordarshan, about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations and key bilateral and multilateral partnerships of India that are enabling its rise. Viewers, in this episode, we are taking a close look at a special strategic partnership that India enjoys with a special country in East Asia, our extended neighbor. This is the Republic of Korea or South Korea. South Korea and India have warm and friendly relations going back millennia. But today, there is a huge momentum and a push to boost the relationship to a higher level in multiple domains. So what is driving this momentum in India-South Korea relations? How will it have a major impact on Asia and the world at large? These are the themes of the show. And to discuss this, I have with me actually, it's a privilege to have a Korean scholar and expert and a think tanker, Dr. Kyunghoon Kim. Dr. Kim is head of the India and South Asia team at the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, which works under the Office of the Prime Minister of South Korea. So, Dr. Kim, welcome to India and to Indian Diplomacy.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dr. Kim, President Lee Jae-myung visited India recently. After 8 years, we've had a South Korean head of state coming to India. So there's been a lot of buzz and expectation. And I wanted to start with the primacy being given to India in the policy of the current Korean administration and overall Korean foreign policy. President said that this is going to be a turning point. And he said that the partnership is going to go to an entirely new level as a result of this. And so it will be useful for our viewers to understand what is this. You have called it a renewed strategic pivot. So what is this renewed strategic pivot towards India, and why is India becoming more important in the calculus of Korea, South Korea? Because normally we think that yes, we have relations, but it is not really of a high strategic level. But I think now we are determined to realize the full potential, right? So what is the impetus from the South Korean side, and why are they taking India more seriously today?
As you noted, the state visit of Korea's President Lee Jae-myung, President Lee, to India was significant for several reasons. First, this year marks the beginning of the second decade of the Korea-India Special Strategic Partnership, which was established when Prime Minister Modi visited Korea in 2015. Second, it was the earliest state visit to India under a new Korean administration, underscoring the importance the current government attaches to India. Third, it took place after a gap of more than 7 years since the last formal summit between the two countries, when Prime Minister Modi visited Korea in 2019. This long gap was somewhat puzzling, especially given how much the geo-economic importance of both countries has grown in recent years. It also raised concerns that the two countries were not being fully reflected in each other's strategic thinking. As we know, major economies have been strengthening their economic and security partnerships with India since the early 2020s, a trend that can be understood in the context of intensifying trade and technology competition between the West and China. From this perspective, the recent summit also reflects an element of economic diversification. Korea, in particular, has begun to place greater emphasis on middle power cooperation or diplomacy in an increasingly multipolar world. However, the importance of India goes beyond this diversification narrative. India is the world's fifth largest economy, the most populous country, and home to rapidly growing manufacturing sector, as well as advanced technology and innovation capabilities in areas such as space and biotechnology. As President Lee emphasized, India is not just a large market, but also a key production base and a pivotal player in global value chains. In line with this, Korean companies have long viewed India as a major production hub, particularly under the Modi government's Make in India initiative. For example, India is Hyundai Motor Company's largest overseas production base, producing more than twice as many vehicles as in the United States, its second largest production hub. With a recent opening of its third factory, its production capacity in India has now reached nearly 1 million units. This trend extends across various industries. Major Korean firms such as Samsung, LG, Kia, HD, Doosan and Hyosung have all established significant manufacturing bases in India and are increasing production capacity. Looking ahead, Korean firms are also exploring new investments in sectors such as shipbuilding and steel. Taken together, the summit can be understood as a timely effort to strengthen and upgrade bilateral economic partnership in an uncertain world.
Well, thank you for summing this up so nicely for us, Dr. Kim. I think take the point especially about big Korean companies have done so well in India, and we are all consumers of Samsung and LG and Kia, for example, and we saw the famous selfie that the chairperson of Samsung took with the Prime Minister and your president, and it's gone viral. So it just shows the depth of the linkages, and indeed that shows the importance of India as a big market for you. We see the point. And you also mentioned that there are strategic sectors in which the focus has shifted. So let's go to those strategic sectors because there's been an announcement of a new industrial cooperation committee.
Sure.
And that is going to drive cooperation in advanced fields like shipbuilding, critical minerals, semiconductors, green hydrogen, just to name a few. And these are all futuristic, and that's why Prime Minister Modi, in fact, he said that this is a trusted relationship, but is becoming a futuristic one. So let's focus a bit on these sectors. I mean, everybody knows South Korea is a technological, powerhouse and with industrial prowess in so many fields. But it will be useful for our audiences to understand what you do in shipbuilding, what you do in semiconductors, for example, and why you are a world leader in this field, and how India can harness and benefit from tagging along with South Korea in these fields.
Sure. The two leaders welcomed the signing of a MOU on the establishment of the Korea-India Industrial Cooperation Committee. This mechanism aims to strengthen bilateral economic ties and create new opportunities for cooperation across a wide range of industries. It focuses on sectors such as automobiles, shipbuilding, chemicals, semiconductors, telecommunication equipment, displays, and batteries. It also seeks to deepen collaboration in strategic resources, including critical minerals, as well as green hydrogen and nuclear energy projects. As you know, Korea is highly competitive in many of these strategic industries, while India is rapidly strengthening its production capabilities and technologies supported by a large and skilled workforce. This creates strong potential for the two countries to align their respective advantages and generate meaningful synergies. Let me focus in particular on shipbuilding and more broadly maritime economy and how the two countries can create value together. Korea's strengths in the maritime sector are deeply rooted in its development experience. As a peninsula surrounded by sea on three sides, Korea's economic transformation since the 1970s has relied heavily on export-led industrialization. In this process, ports, shipping, and shipbuilding played a central role, and today Korea holds world-leading positions in these industries. Korea now possesses a comprehensive maritime industrial ecosystem that includes globally competitive shipbuilders, shipping companies, port operators, marine equipment manufacturers, and specialized engineering firms. This integrated ecosystem is one of Korea's key competitive advantages. The global shipbuilding cycle is currently favorable, providing Korean companies with both the capacity and incentives to expand internationally. Given the cyclical nature of the industry, diversification into emerging countries is strategically important. At the same time, as domestic growth moderates in Korea, overseas maritime infrastructure projects and exports of maritime industrial products to fast-growing economies such as India offer new avenues for growth. At the same time, India's maritime policy landscape is evolving rapidly. The Indian government has introduced two major frameworks, Maritime India Vision 2030 and Maritime America Vision 2047. These strategies set ambitious targets for port modernization, logistics efficiency, and shipbuilding capacity. The most notable goal is to elevate India's shipbuilding industry from around 20th globally into the top 10 by 2030 and further into top 5 by 2047. Domestic demand will be a key driver of this transformation, given that many major shipping and energy companies are government-owned in India. The Indian government, has significant purchasing power. Recently, Prime Minister Modi announced long-term plans to order 437 ships valued at approximately $25 billion. In addition, India has introduced regulatory reforms, fiscal incentives, and a maritime development fund to support the expansion of its shipbuilding sector. These policies clearly indicate that maritime development has become a national priority. To achieve its vision, the Indian government has repeatedly identified Korea as a key partner. Reflecting these overlapping interests, a key outcome of the summit in this area was the comprehensive framework for partnership on shipbuilding, shipping, and maritime logistics.
Well, it's a big success story. Viewers, South Korea is one of the Asian tigers and has been an inspiration for all of us in this continent. How to drive fast-paced industrialization, modernization, shipbuilding, which Dr. Kyunghoon Kim is just narrating to us, is one of the areas, one of the showcase areas apart from automobiles and electronics, which we are familiar with in India. Indeed, there's a lot of complementarity, and we'll be looking forward to harnessing the South Korean technology and know-how and making these in India. Dr. Kim, there's another interesting, agreement to create a new digital bridge framework. And the two sides have affirmed a faith in artificial intelligence, quantum, and information technologies, and to advance cooperation in these areas. Again, South Korea, is a major world player in these areas, and India, of course, has ambitions for its own AI, driven growth policies and its own AI mission and all those things. So please tell us a little more about these areas and how teaming up with South Korea is going to be advantageous for India.
So the two leaders welcome the launch of the India-Korea Digital Bridge Framework, which focuses on areas such as AI, data governance, and digital businesses. They appreciated each other's visions for AI development, guided by the principle of AI for all and MANAV, which seek to promote innovation while ensuring accessibility and inclusivity. In this context, Korea and India have strong potential to work together to foster broad-based AI development. They also expressed a shared interest in deepening cooperation across various AI verticals, including research collaboration and talent development. Looking ahead, there's also scope to link AI development with renewable energy cooperation, given the growing energy demands of digital infrastructure. Also, the potential areas of cooperation in the digital and data economy are wide-ranging. These include digital trade, digital payments, digital education, smart infrastructure, and smart factories. In addition, there's a growing importance attached to cybersecurity and data protection, as well as the multilateral cooperation on digital public infrastructure. There was also discussion on the role of enabling technologies, particularly semiconductors, in supporting digital innovation and cooperation. Prime Minister Modi briefed President Lee on the rapid development of India's semiconductor industry and encouraged Korean companies to take advantage of government incentives and the expanding market. As we know, India has introduced a $10 billion incentive scheme to promote semiconductor ecosystem called India Semiconductor Mission. Under the ISM, 10 major projects have been initiated, with subsidy allocations already completed. The first project, a semiconductor backend facility by Micron Technology, began operations in March this year, and the government is expected to announce the ISM 2.0 package. In the semiconductor industry, there's clear potential to combine Korea's strengths in manufacturing with India's capabilities in software and R&D. This synergy is already evident. For example, Samsung Electronics operates one of its largest overseas R&D centers in India.
Absolutely. And, so many South Korean companies, hundreds of them over the years have made India one of their production bases, and we are very keen to attract more investment and to also promote the trade relationship. One of the interesting developments, Dr. Kim, has been, the target set by the two sides to approximately double the bilateral trade and bring it up to 50 billion per annum. Because although we've had a free trade agreement called the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement for almost more than 15 years, it has not delivered the volumes that we were desired.
Sure.
And there was also an imbalance from the Indian side, as in we were importing more and exporting less. So there is an upgrade that's being talked about for this trade agreement as well. In your view, what is the way forward insofar as the overall bilateral trade is concerned, and how can we rev it up to the next level?
So in its economic cooperation with India over the past decade, the Korean government has primarily focused on negotiations to upgrade the so-called SEPA, which entered into force in 2010. Since the Korea-India SEPA came into effect, the shares of Korea's exports to and imports from India have remained relatively low, at around 3% and 1% of Korea's total, respectively. Given this underwhelming performance, calls to improve the agreement began to emerge in Korea from the mid-2010s. In particular, many stakeholders emphasized the need to ease the rules of origin, especially those based on the cumulative criteria, and to expand the list of concession items. Accordingly, Korea and India launched negotiations to upgrade the SEPA in October 2016 and have held 11 rounds of talks over the past decade. While negotiations were initially conducted on a regular basis, they were suspended for more than 3 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Although talks resumed in 2022, there have been no meetings for nearly 2 years since the last round. While the Korean government remains committed to continuing the traditional SEPA upgrade negotiations, the Indian government appears to have relatively limited interest. There are several reasons for this. First, India has been actively engaged in negotiating new FTAs with its major trading partners. And second, as you have mentioned, it has expressed concerns about its growing trade deficits with Korea. Against this backdrop, the two countries appear to be considering the possibility of launching negotiations for a new, more comprehensive economic agreement, one that goes beyond the traditional SEPA upgrade and covers a broad range of areas. This could follow a pathway similar to that of India and Australia, which are now moving toward comprehensive economic cooperation.
We have almost doubled, trade with Australia in just a few years. Even with the UAE, it's quadrupled, the trade. So yeah, something on that scale might really be a game changer.
Definitely, and they are currently negotiating the SECA, which is an expanded version of the Economic Cooperation Trade Agreement, ECTA, that entered into force in 2022. Such an agreement, as you have said, could include areas such as labor mobility, supply chains, digital and green cooperation, economic security, development partnership. And in my view, this should be the ultimate goal. And to move in this direction, substantial preparation will be required. As a first step, the Korean government may need to shift its focus away from a narrow SEPA upgrade centered on further market opening and instead prioritize strategic industrial cooperation with India, an approach that was clearly reflected in the recent summit.
Absolutely. It's all strategic, viewers, and strategic is the word, and we don't take it lightly. It actually has major impact and has multiple ripple effects if we do it well with South Korea. Talking of strategic, Dr. Kim, defense is another area where we are doing really well. We already have like showpiece items of cooperation like the K9 howitzer tank that the Indian Army uses, including high altitude areas where we have like major security threats from our neighbors. So in that context, the manufacturing of the K9, for example, more than 60-70% is now being done here in India. And that's our preference too for defense to become self-reliant. It's a long aspired goal of India to become self-reliant. And here I wanted to quote President Lee's vision, make in India together with Korea. So in defense, how do you see this going? South Korea has become, very quickly, in hardly like 10 years, it has leapfrogged and come into the list of our top 10, defense partners. So we would like them to climb up further. So how can we do this together? Co-production, co-design, and development of weaponry.
So first, let's talk about why defense industry cooperation is so important. As we know, defense industry cooperation is not simply about exporting military equipment. It shapes how countries operate together. So when partners use similar platforms, coordination becomes easier and operational familiarity increases. Over time, this contributes to more effective security collaboration, and this is something both Korea and India increasingly need. And from this perspective, defense industry ties are closely linked to broader strategic relations. At present, however, Korea-India defense industry cooperation remains limited in scope. The export of the K9 self-propelled howitzer is a meaningful achievement. It demonstrates that Korean companies can meet India's operational requirements and that such cooperation is feasible. But beyond this case, the overall portfolio remains quite narrow. The next step is to expand and diversify cooperation into sectors such as additional combat systems, as well as maritime, aerospace, and air defense. In the short term, Korea is particularly interested in cooperating on self-propelled air defense gun missile systems, known as 비호복합 in Korean. More broadly, future cooperation will need to be compatible with the Make in India initiative. This implies a shift from a model centered on direct export to one that includes local production and joint manufacturing. Securing defense contracts in India is no longer just about offering competitive products. It also requires demonstrating a clear commitment to India's domestic industrial development. This is why President Lee mentioned the importance of joint technology development and co-production in the Times of India interview. I will also add that the two leaders emphasized the strategic importance of defense cooperation by agreeing to reinvigorate the 2020 MOU on the roadmap to defense industry cooperation. The key question then is how to operationalize this. To move forward, we must first identify the most promising areas of cooperation. This requires close collaboration at the research level. Think tanks and research institutions can play an important role in mapping India's procurement priorities and assessing Korea's comparative advantages. They can also help identify feasible areas for joint development or co-production. At the same time, industrial level engagement needs to be strengthened. India's defense sector includes both state-owned enterprises and private firms, while Korea's defense industry is largely driven by private companies.
Right.
Bridging these different ecosystems will require more active and sustained interaction. So joint forums, working level exchanges, and project-based collaboration can help build this foundation and generate concrete ideas. In this regard, the launch of the Korea-India Defense Acceleration Platform, KIND-X, which brings together companies, incubators, investors, defense startups, and universities from both sides, is a promising development. And finally, there's a need for a more structured approach at the government level. An updated bilateral defense cooperation roadmap will be particularly useful. Such a roadmap would set realistic goals, identify key stakeholders, and clarify the types of institutional support that governments are willing to provide. It would also serve as an important signaling function. By clearly outlining priorities and commitments, it can enhance predictability for companies and other stakeholders involved.
Right, viewers, defense cooperation is not just about convergence of interests or willingness to buy and sell. What Dr. Kim is telling us is that it requires a great deal of institutional preparedness and coordination on both sides, and that's what we are doing right now, and we will see definitely more success stories like the K9 Vajra in the future. Last but not least, Dr. Kim, Indo-Pacific is our common home. This is an area where both President Lee and Prime Minister Modi have talked about the need for a rules-based order, one which is based on adherence to international law, and where all the actors feel secure and safe. And so in this domain, which is more of a geopolitical one, it's good news to see the South Korea has joined the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, which is an Indian initiative, IPOI as we call it. And increasingly we are also doing like joint exercises between the navies and in this region.
Yes.
And we have a shared interest, and yet if I were to be frank, the kind of geopolitical understanding we have with Japan is much higher than we have with South Korea, right? Because Japan is part of the Quad and all those things, right? And so, and many of us believe that South Korea, because of the location and if its positioning cannot take a very confrontational stand towards China also, while Japan has a long-running historical disputes with China. So in that context, what is the Indo-Pacific potential for India and South Korea, to go together? How far can we go? And can we see a day when South Korea and India are so closely aligned like the way Japan and India are aligned?
So like India, Korea is committed to advancing multilateralism, a rules-based international order and cooperation among strategically aligned countries to safeguard peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. In the maritime domain, this commitment is reflected in Korea's participation in the International Fleet Review and the multinational exercise Milan, hosted by India. Building on this, Korea has also announced that its intention to join the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. In addition, both countries reiterated their commitment to uphold freedom of navigation based on the international law, particularly as reflected in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. That said, geopolitical cooperation in the Indo-Pacific goes beyond maritime partnership. In this context, Korea and India discussed a range of regional and global security issues, including conflicts in West Asia and Ukraine, the situation on the Korean Peninsula, and the challenge of cross-border terrorism. They also explored avenues for strengthening multilateral cooperation. For example, Korea announced its intention to join the India-initiated International Solar Alliance, ISA, and both countries agreed to enhance coordination within multilateral platforms such as WTO and the G20. So as you have said, it is at an early stage, but our security partnership in the Indo-Pacific, I believe, will strengthen very rapidly going forward.
Great. So viewers, very, very informative discussion with Dr. Kyunghoon Kim. And what we have discussed is that, South Korea and India are ramping up in different domains with a clear vision. And the leadership on both sides is really, really committed to make sure that we realize the full potential of this special partnership, a special strategic partnership. I want to quote President Lee, who mentioned that we are meeting at a time of heightened geopolitical uncertainty and with major supply chain instability. So Dr. Kim was referring to the fact that we are not only talking about the Western Pacific and the Indian Ocean, but also beyond, because there are global issues like supply chain bottlenecks caused by the war in the Middle East or West Asia, for example. Here also, the preference for players like South Korea and India is to come together, form a broader coalition of like-minded countries, and to advocate for shared interests so that we maintain that free and open Indo-Pacific. Let me thank Dr. Kyunghoon Kim for being in India and for championing this relationship and for telling all these wonderful points about the bilateral cooperation to our audience. And we hope that your work continues to promote the relationship to a higher level. Thank you so much for your time and for your words of wisdom.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this show.
So viewers, South Korea and India are indeed starting a new chapter. This is an old relationship, but with reinvigoration is happening right now. And there is clearly an effort on both sides to take this to the next level. And we heard how, in terms of very practical nitty-gritty aspects, South Korea is of high value to India. And vice versa. India is also becoming more important from a South Korean point of view. And I don't think you need anything better than this kind of convergence of shared interests to realize the full potential of what is a special strategic partnership, but could become even bigger and more meaningful in scale and scope. So let's cheer for the South Korea-India friendship, and let's all make a point to understand the South Korean viewpoint on Asia, the Indo-Pacific, and the world. And of course, South Korean companies, South Korean industry are household names in India, and we love them. But now I think we are going to ramp up to a higher level, and we will see really the strategic partnership is coming to the fore. And that is great news for us all. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.